And please go ahead, Madam Chair.
All right. This meeting of the Florida Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights shall come to order. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I would like to invite Liliana Schiller, the support specialist for the Florida Advisory Committee, to assist with roll call committee members. If you are joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourselves and *6 to place yourself back on mute until it is time for the committee members to do the Q&A. Liliana, please.
Of course. Thanks, Madam Chair. Warren Belmar.
Present.
Charlene Taylor-Hill.
Present.
Thomas Newcomb-Hyde.
Present.
Linda Kidwell. Oh, she's here. She's just muted.
I said here, but it didn't
Linda.
come through. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Debbie Macon.
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Morley.
Here.
Victor Romano. Zach Smith.
Here.
Brandon Wolf. And Tufik Zakaria.
And I, Nadine Smith, am also present. Also present are commission staff, and there may be members of the public who have joined in a listen-only capacity until they are invited to share comments during the public comment period. Closed captions are available for today's briefing. To view closed captions, click the CC icon in the lower left corner of your screen. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights is an independent, bipartisan agency of the federal government charged with studying discrimination or denial of equal protection of the law because of race, color, religion, sex, age, disability, or national origin, or in the administration of justice. In each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia, an advisory committee to the Commission has been established, and they are made up of responsible persons who serve without compensation to advise the Commission on relevant information concerning their respective states. Our purpose today is to hear testimony regarding voting rights in Florida in the case of natural disaster or other public emergency. If speakers begin to veer away from the civil rights question at hand to discuss possibly important but unrelated topics, I will interrupt and ask them to refrain from doing so. Today's meeting is the second in a two-part series of meetings the committee is hosting on this topic. Our first panel took place yesterday, Tuesday, April 8th. Records are publicly available, and the recording will be distributed shortly. All meeting information is available in the Federal Register. Based on the information collected through testimony, our committee will compile a report to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights that will include findings and recommendations. The Commission will then forward those recommendations to the appropriate federal, state, and local entities. I'll now present the ground rules for today's meeting. This is a public meeting, open to the media and general public. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. We have scheduled panelists who will be making brief presentations within the limited time available. After all the panelists have concluded their statements, committee members will engage them in questions and answers. The rules for the committee Q&A portion of the panel discussion are as follows. The Q&A session is reserved for committee members only. The committee may ask questions of the entire panel or individual members of the panel after all panelists have had the opportunity to provide their prepared statements. Committee members must be recognized by the chair before asking any questions of the participants. To ensure all members have the opportunity to participate, questions will initially be limited to one per committee member. We ask that members present their question to the panel and then allow for speakers to provide a complete and uninterrupted response. The chair may allow for additional or follow-up questions as time permits. The meeting host may mute lines as necessary in order to uphold these guidelines. To accommodate persons who are not on the agenda but wish to make statements, a public comment section will commence once the committee Q&A period concludes. At the appropriate time, when I indicate to do so, anyone wishing to make a statement should use the raise hand function on their web browser to request their line be unmuted. They will then have the opportunity to unmute themselves in order to speak. In order to ensure that all aspects of the issues are represented, knowledgeable persons with a wide variety of experience and viewpoints have been invited to share information with us. Though some of the statements made today may be controversial, we want to ensure that all guests do not defame or degrade any person or any organization. As the chair, I reserve the privilege to cut short any statements that defame, degrade, or do not pertain to the issue at hand. Any person or organization that feels defamed or degraded by statements made in these proceedings may provide a public response during the open comment period. Alternately, such persons or organizations can file written statements for inclusion in the proceedings. I urge all persons making presentations to be judicious in their statements and keep to the civil rights topic at hand. The advisory committee appreciates the willingness of all participants to share their views and experiences with the committee. At this time, I would like to invite our first panelist to begin. As a reminder, committee Q&A will not commence until after we've heard from both of our speakers today. I encourage committee members to use the raised hand function so that we can begin to build a queue. You will see the bios for each of our panelists on the screen. The slide will include all of their background. Our first panelist is Byrd, Florida's Secretary of State. Secretary Byrd, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Morley, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I've got oh, there we go. There's my slide. Okay. So, okay, there we go. So I'll begin by providing some background on elections in Florida. The source of our authority to conduct federal elections, as you know, is Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution of the state of Florida holds that a general election for state and county officers is to be held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every even year. While this may seem obvious to some, I reiterate these facts to underscore that the law is at the very foundation of Florida's elections. Elections are overseen by the Office of the Secretary of State and the 67 Supervisors of Elections. By statutory authority, the Secretary of State also serves as Florida's Chief Elections Officer. In this role, I work closely with the supervisors to ensure their duties can be carried out in accord with state law. Thanks to the unwavering support and leadership from Governor DeSantis, we have worked with the Florida legislature to make election integrity a top priority. In the last 3 years, Florida has passed more substantial election integrity reforms than any other state in the nation. These reforms have made our elections more secure, transparent, and efficient, which has instilled a high degree of confidence with Florida's 13.5 million registered voters. While we will continue to make every effort to minimize human error in elections, Mother Nature also sometimes has a say. As it happens, the typical election season coincides with hurricane season, which is from June 1st to November 30th. In Florida, we do not move or delay elections. As such, it is imperative that we maintain robust emergency plans. Storms, fires, floods, electrical outages, blocked roads, it all happens, and we are prepared for all contingencies. My office works closely with the 67 county supervisors of elections and the governor's office to ensure that when emergencies do arise, we take the necessary steps to ensure that every voter has the opportunity to cast a ballot. During the last 2 election cycles in 2022 and 2024, 5 severe hurricanes hit different parts of the state. Counties lost polling locations, voters were displaced from their homes, infrastructure was severely diminished, and the election still went on. When natural disasters like this happen, it is our mission to ensure that all eligible voters who cast their vote on election day during early voting and by mail can be confident that their voices will be heard. On September 28th, 2022, Hurricane Ian made landfall along the coast of Lee County with less than 30 days before the start of Florida's early voting period for the general election. I personally visited the affected counties to survey the damage. I saw firsthand the destruction and worked with the supervisors of elections in the severely affected counties to determine their needs. In response, Governor DeSantis issued an executive order giving relief to voters in the most severely impacted counties and flexibility to supervisors to establish additional voting sites, expand vote by mail options, and amend reporting requirements. This executive order waived certain training requirements for poll workers and provided incentives for state workers to serve as poll workers. Finally, on Monday, November 7th, 2022, as supervisors and voters were making their final preparations the day before the presidential election, Hurricane Nicole formed off the Atlantic coast of Florida. Governor DeSantis declared a state of emergency for the entire state. Supervisors expressed their anticipated needs to me prior to landfall, and I issued Department of State Executive Order 22-02. This order provided an extended deadline for eligibility verification for provisional ballot voters, for curing vote by mail ballots, and for supervisors to submit their unofficial election returns to the Department of State. As a result of these executive actions, the general election turnout in the most severely impacted counties either closely matched or exceeded statewide voter turnout in 2022. 2024 was another active hurricane season, and in Florida, we had to adjust to ensure voters had every opportunity to cast a ballot. On August 1st, 2024, the governor declared a state of emergency in 54 counties in preparation for Hurricane Debbie. Debbie brought heavy rainfall, flash flooding, and strong wind gusts to Florida's Big Bend coastal counties. Although several counties needed to reschedule their early voting start dates, Florida's August 18th primary election went on as scheduled. The following month, on September 28th, within a week of the supervisors canvassing the election's first votes for the general election, Hurricane Helene, a Category 4 major hurricane, made landfall in Taylor County, not far from where Hurricane Debbie made landfall. 2 weeks later, on October 9th, Hurricane Milton, a Category 3 major hurricane, made landfall in Sarasota County, leaving more destruction in its wake. Governor DeSantis took executive action by signing 2 additional executive orders, which created a streamlined process for displaced voters to have their vote by mail ballots sent to where they were living after the storms. It also gave supervisors of elections the ability to relocate or consolidate polling sites or early voting sites. While these storms may have disrupted the daily lives of voters, we made sure it would not take away their ability to vote. And in 2024, Florida saw its highest voter turnout in 30 years. For example, Taylor County, which received direct hits from 2 hurricanes leading up to 2024, saw 90.9% voter turnout. I can tell you that it's encouraging to see how people still want to perform their civic duty despite being displaced by these devastating storms. The natural disasters of 2022 and 2024 reinforced the importance of excellent coordination and planning. Natural disasters are at best a major disruption and at worst devastating experiences. We learned that despite the uncertainties posted by emergencies, voters still want to vote and elections can still proceed. Governor DeSantis has shown that in times of disaster, executive orders are the key to election continuity. The governor and I used our executive power to permit flexibility when warranted, while also maintaining the high standard of election integrity established in Florida law. We do not move or delay elections, but we do ensure that voters affected by emergencies can vote. During times of disaster, information is key. In all cases, my staff in the Department of State has provided an accurate and reliable source of information for supervisors and their voters. The Department of State works closely with election officials, issues press releases, updates social media channels, maintains the Emergency and Disaster Election Resources webpage, and answer calls on the voter hotline. A big factor in our successful election emergency responses has been due to the professionalism of Florida's 67 county election officials. I was extremely impressed with their fortitude and resilience in the face of destruction. Despite the devastation and damage wrought on their communities, they remained focused on their mission to provide voters access to the ballot. Finally, I want to credit the voters of the voters. Floridians are resilient. I want to applaud them, especially those directly in the path of the storms, who, despite their setbacks, still use the means available to them to have their voices heard. In addition to leading the nation in election reforms, Florida is also ahead of the curve when it comes to emergency response and preparedness. In fair or foul weather, Florida's elections will continue to proceed. And I want to thank the committee for their time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Byrd. And we now go to our next panelist. And my computer's frozen up just a little bit, but our next panelist is the Chief Deputy Supervisor of Elections from Duval County, Justin Gicalone. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for having us on to discuss about election administration and emergency preparedness. Melissa, next slide, please. Just a little background on Duval County. We have about 660,000 voters, currently about the 6th largest county in Florida. Party breakdown just for 38% Democrats, 37% of Republicans, and the remaining 25% are NPA or of the minor party. We have 160 precincts in Duval County, 158 polling locations, and 24 early voting sites. Our office has 34 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees. Once the election period kicks off, we move up to about 60 to 80 additional seasonal employees will join our forces, and about 1,700 poll workers will be employed during that time. Next slide, please. The biggest thing when it comes to emergency preparedness, we're going to talk a little bit from more of the preparedness side of things. Secretary Byrd, who his slides you kind of saw, Duval was not severely impacted, although we are impacted, but not to that level. But there are 3 main stakeholders, and there's other stakeholders within. Obviously, our county as a SOE office, the Florida Division of Elections, that we constantly are in communication with any type of emergency. Not just natural disasters, but anything that's could be of a physical security concern, information, cyber attack, things like that, as well as our Duval County Emergency Preparedness Division that we will work with in a group with a setting should something come about. Next slide, please. The state of Florida does require some things for us to make sure that we are prepared for it. And some of this is an overlap of what the city also requires us to do. The main one is our COOP, our continuity of operation plan, and our voting security systems minimum standards. Both of those have to be submitted before each election. So those are constantly being reviewed. These documents are a living document. We should always be practicing, looking at them, looking for updates, best practices. What do we learn if we had to implement? Do we need to adjust anything? Things like that. And then when it comes to the cyber and stuff, there is a memorandum of agreement for minimum security standards for the Florida voter registration system that runs through our IT department to make sure that they're in compliance, to make sure nothing could affect the main voter registration system. Next slide, please. Again, the city of Jacksonville also, besides the COOP plan, that is an annual plan that we do submit. We don't just submit like the state, we have to do every election, but for the state, for our city, we just do it the one time. We also designate an emergency coordinator officer and an alternate ECO in that function to make sure the COOP plan is up to date, make sure that if something were to happen, that they have a communication line to follow. The emergency action plan, this is something else the city does require. We have 2 locations here in Duval County, and both of them will have its own individual. These are tailored to the building themselves. Should some type of emergency happen inside the building, where do we evacuate? Where do we go? What happens? What gets shut down? Things like that. With this plan, we worked with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as well as the city's risk management to create this. I'll talk a little bit more about JSO's assistance in that, and when we get to the physical security here in a little bit. The main thing with the emergency action plan with any of this stuff is it's great that's on paper, but you've got to practice it. You don't want to practice it the day that it comes out. So we'll run through a training as we can to ensure that employees don't have questions, so they know what to do should we have to implement either of these plans. Next slide, please. Like I said, there's natural disasters, which Secretary Byrd mentioned and stuff, kind of what we talked about with the hurricanes and things like that. The main thing when it comes to this is being prepared before, and then what happens after it happens. The before thing is the key, and Secretary Byrd mentioned this a few times, is communication. The state is always in constant communication with us. We are also in constant communication with the County Emergency Preparedness Division, as well as our local USPS. The United States Postal Service plays a critical role when it comes to vote by mail and stuff like that. We got to figure out what the impact is when it comes to getting ballots out or getting them back during a natural disaster. We internally will have division status updates a little bit more frequent, figure out if there's any kind of potential impact. Do we have employees that have to evacuate for some medical emergency or anything like that? We ensure that our emergency contact list is up to date and correct. Make sure we have a backup should something happen where we lose power, phone service, so that we know when to return back to work and things like that. And then the other communication process is the public. What is the impact to them? Again, end of the day, we're here to ensure that they can get their vote cast. So we will constantly use the media, social media, to relay those messages as we go through our website as well. After should a natural disaster happen, the hurricanes that were mentioned earlier and stuff, the city did shut down for some days. So we had to assess afterwards. Do we have any damage to our election center, which is our central operation when it comes to election time? Polling places, we could quickly make contact. Maybe if we can't make contact, we're out to the sites to see if there's any kind of damage. Some of those polling locations are not there every day. Some will evacuate and not get back until a few days after the storm comes and goes. Division updates are constantly asked about delivery, staffing issues, deliveries in the sense that if we had ballots that were in transit, where are they at now? Things like that. Staffing issues, did any poll workers are unable to fill the duty of the role that they were hired for? Maybe they evacuated and they can't get back in time, things like that. So we're completely in from there. And then again, communicating with the public, let them know, is there polling location changes? Is there any effect to the early voting hours? Anything like that. So we have all that set in place. Next slide, please. Physical security was a big thing nowadays and stuff as we kind of look through this. So when Supervisor Holland came into office in 2023, we quickly were contacted and invited a few different departments, organizations to our office to see kind of where we stand. And we had basically assessments. We had a physical and information, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But with the assessments, we invited Homeland Security, CISA, the Florida Department of State came, their cyber navigators, and we also had the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Homeland and cyber navigators kind of did basically about the same type of physical thing. Do we have blind spots? Things like that. One example, so simple, but again, my office has a window. They then saw that someone could stand on the outside, see my computer screen. So now we moved my desk back and we have shades on all computers around so that information is covered. Things like that. So there's different things, two-factor authentication when it comes to getting into certain types of rooms, different things and stuff that they provide. And we were able to get funding and make those enhancements. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office played a key role in one of the biggest things that we saw leading up to 24, which was potential attacks through mail. They came in and saw our process of handling mail. And it's not just vote by mail. It's just office mail as it comes in. We took some of their suggestions and we implemented those. Some as simple as basically a straight path to the mailroom. So we have actually created a mailroom at our downtown location so that the mail goes straight to them, doesn't go all the way through the office. We trained employees on suspicious looking packages, things like that, as well as created a potential contaminant box should we think we have a suspicious piece of mail to open. So we've implemented a lot of that stuff. Again, the main thing we saw of others, you see SME, that's subject matter experts. That's what these people are hired for. That's what they're trained for. So we invite them in to help us. The implementation, again, we talked about providing emergency action plans. Office staff holders have got to be trained on it, reviewed, practiced. And then at the end, if we get through a year of no emergency, we're still going to reassess our situation, see where we're at and stuff. If we actually had an event happen, we'll reassess and go from there. Periodic reviews with staff to include new employees. We always have new employees coming in and out, so we got to make sure that we can have that. Continue with assessments conducted by the state, CISA if it's still there, JSO and stuff to make sure we do have the best practices as things change. Next slide, please. And then the information security, main thing, cyber attacks and stuff. Basically, we bring in the Florida Department of State cyber navigators. We do a vulnerability scan. They provide question and we provide answers with regards to FRS, MOA, the memorandum of agreement, which was mentioned earlier, and we review the scan. Our city is consolidated. So we utilize the city's ITD. So they will come in and help with that to allow the pen test and everything to go through and everything and make sure that we're ready to go. If attacks during the election period, our plan is activated. The stakeholders are in constant communication. Our city ITD will be reaching out. The Emergency Preparedness Division will be activated for the city. The state will be notified. Again, communication as we go through that. After the election cycle, really goes right back to it. Did we learn anything? If nothing happened, what do we hear from other counties, other states? What can we learn from? Do we need to adjust anything in our plans, from security to the coops. And then our ITD also continuous trains all employees with the latest and greatest when it comes to cyber attacks and stuff like that, phishing, things in that similarity. Next slide, please. So basically, at the end of the day, when it comes to emergency preparedness, you got to be prepared. We have to build relationships. And again, that's our stakeholders to make sure, and it's communication, not just with the stakeholders, but with the public to ensure that we can get through to the election, to make sure that, as Secretary Byrd showed, turnout meets or exceeds as what it typically is. And that's all I have. I appreciate the time. And if I'll be here for any questions.
Thank you very much. I open the floor now to committee members. And if you would use the raised hand function, you will make my life easier. Who would like to go first? This is not a shy bunch, so. And the winner is Linda Kidwell.
Hi, thank you very much for agreeing to come to talk to us today. One of you briefly touched on it. I believe it was Supervisor Gicalone, if I got your name correct, or if not, I apologize. But the role of the post office and ensuring that ballots in transition are safely delivered or recovered or that sort of thing. How do you ensure that happens? What sort of power does the state have to make sure the post office carries out its role properly?
Yeah. So I might kick this to Secretary Byrd, but I'll at least give the initial slide. Is usually the states in relay to us. We do hold stakeholder meetings with the USPS, especially during election time, about weekly. When it comes to a natural disaster or anything like that, they might come a little frequent. So we're holding stakeholder meetings weekly to kind of give us, hey, the BMU is going to be closed this day. We're going to be delayed a day and things like that as they kind of impact it. The state might have a little bit more from their side of things, but that's kind of the communication we have. And they keep us updated on office closures. Don't bring mail to us today because we're going to be shut. Hold it till tomorrow. We'll be back open, things like that.
Yeah, directly. So we have direct contacts with USPS. So my director of the Division of Elections reaches out to them when we're anticipating a storm. We kind of get a feel for which part of the state it's going to hit, and then we're in constant communication. And just as Justin said, whether or not it's hold or we have it, they'll hold mail for us at certain regional spots that are outside of the area, and then work with them once we find out which areas of the state are impacted. And I can tell you, in visiting some of the sites after the hurricanes, mail is literally undeliverable during that time, but we have a process and a plan for holding the ballots and then redirecting them either back to the supervisor's office or getting them to where the voter has been displaced.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Morley, you are up.
Great. Can you hear me?
We can hear you in stereo, sir.
Okay, is that working any better?
Yes, it is.
Just a little bit. Go ahead. Well, now we can't hear you. I'll tell you what, Michael, can you hear us?
Perfectly.
There you go. I think you have your phone and your camera on. I think you have to mute one or the other. There we go. Okay. Nope, now we've lost you.
Sorry about that. Is that working better?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Excellent. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Well, I'd also like to begin by echoing everyone's who thanked both of our speakers for taking the time to join us today. Those were extremely helpful presentations, and also thank you both for all of your hard work in helping our state be able to conduct elections in the face of emergencies such as this. One particular topic that the second presentation touched on more that I wanted to get the speakers' views on is obviously natural disasters, hurricanes are one of the biggest crises that we face in Florida, but another type of system-wide threat or system-wide disaster, which we've alluded to and that in recent years have become more of a concern, is cybersecurity type threats, and in particular systemic threats, particularly the possibility of attacks from foreign actors that might attempt to interfere with the electoral process on a systemic level. And I know the Secretary of State's office offers important cybersecurity resources, and the supervisor talked about taking advantage of those. I wonder if you're able to talk about the role of the federal CISA and whether the designation of Florida elections as critical infrastructure has helped to improve our ability to deal with natural disasters. If rollbacks of the availability of CISA resources has undermined our ability to deal with these sorts of election crises, and just what your view on the importance of either the county's or the state's relationship with CISA has been, and going forward, what you think the best approach would be.
Yeah, so I'll take that one first. We've certainly had a great relationship with our federal partners, and we think it is a partnership between the states and the federal government, and then the states down to the local governments on cybersecurity. I mean, it's it's not a secret that we have foreign state threat actors who are constantly probing our systems, and so we rely on federal assistance in that area. But we also have internally at the state level, I have a team that's dedicated to doing nothing but cybersecurity, and then assisting the counties. We have, as Justin mentioned, cyber navigators that also work with the counties. I mean, it's a 24/7, 365 job to protect, as you mentioned, this critical infrastructure, which we do hope it remains classified as critical infrastructure by the federal government, and would continue to welcome their support, because they can bring resources to bear that individual states just don't have.
Yeah, so as from a county level thing, our county IT, they handle their own security. But again, the more you can get in from above or outside to help to ensure that everything you have in place is secure and stuff. So we will always welcome, the state, CISA, to test out that stuff. We've talked with our security director for the city's ITD. And I'm sorry, I say Information Technology Division. I keep saying ITD, sorry. And stuff as we go through that, and they welcome it. They were actually kind of all for it because it tests them and stuff like that. And here's the best part from a county perspective: there's no cost to us. There's stuff from that. So that's the way the state help and the federal government helps to ensure security from that sense.
All right, thank you. I'll pose my question now to both of you. Given the fact that Florida is experiencing more frequent and increasing intensity climate events, and that we have a history of razor-thin margins in elections, one of the concerns is the application of the emergency voting measures. So I grew up in Bay County, and in 2018, when Hurricane Michael hit, the Bay County Supervisor of Elections permitted ballots, about 158 ballots, to be submitted via email and via fax. Not something that was included in the scope of allowable ways to deliver. And I believe all of them checked out as authentic ballots. So the question is, the flexibility given to local supervisors to respond to extraordinary weather events, and the way that the state provides guidance, what is in place to ensure that that is not impacted based on the demographics or the political leaning of a region? Like, what is in place to make sure that the same rule is applied regardless of where you are in the state? And then what analysis occurs to ensure that that's actually happening? And then what safeguards? Because once a ballot is cast, I think most people are loath to take votes away from people. But I think this is one of the concerns, that the application of this can end up being a thumb on the scale that can mean the difference between a win or a loss, depending on where it happens. I present that to both of you.
Sure. Well, the incident you mentioned with Hurricane Michael, that was before my time as Secretary of State, but I'm certainly very, very well aware of of what happened there. But what I do, or my practice has been, when a hurricane, when we know we have a good idea with, 48, 72 hours of where it's going to strike. And listen, they can jog, hundreds of miles in that time. But what I do is I reach out to the counties and where it looks like the hurricane is going. First and foremost is to ensure the safety and security of the election, their employees and the staff, make sure they're safe and secure, that the hatches are battened down. And then so getting ready in anticipation, letting them know we're here. Then once the hurricane hits, we know where it hits. And once we've ensured life and limb are secure, then reaching out to the individual supervisors and saying, what do you need? What has been affected? Because after the hurricanes in 22, when I went and visited, you could have one county where they're experiencing severe flooding, another county, no flooding, but damage to facilities. And so it's really meeting the needs of each individual county. So it's reaching out to the supervisors. They tell us what they need. I relay that to the governor's office, and then we craft an executive order that meets the needs of that specific county. So I can tell you in 2022 and 2024, that's exactly what we did, regardless of where it hits or who it hits. That's the process that we have. And I think it works well because every single storm is different. I know there have been some attempts there's some recommendations to try to have a one size fits all rule for when a hurricane hits. I don't think that is the right approach. I think the way we do it is correct. Once again, my job is I'm not the boss of the 67 supervisors of elections, but it is my role and duty to enforce the election code. And what I wouldn't want to happen is giving supervisors the ability carte blanche to just make their own rules depending on the disaster. I think it's important that they cooperate with the state because ultimately, we're charged with ensuring a statewide fair election, and only when we can enforce the election code the same in similar situations, in my opinion, does that work properly. So I think we have struck the right balance, and I can assure you, I would hear from the voters in those areas if they didn't think it was being conducted properly, and we have not had any complaints about the manner or anybody's ability to cast a ballot being impacted in those affected areas.
Yeah, I'll echo basically what Secretary Byrd said and stuff. The main thing is out of all that is the flexibility, communication as well. From there, knock on wood, Duval County has not had that talk completely when it comes to that, like some of the other counties, Bay County back in 18 that you mentioned. So we haven't gone through that. Our majority of our stuff when I talked was preparedness and stuff for that. The other thing that wasn't mentioned is it also depends on the time frame. What's going to be impacted? Is it going to be the initial drop of vote by mail? Is early voting going to be impacted? Florida, we do have some optional days in there. That if it's the optional days, are we good? But is it the mandatory days? How do we adjust that and stuff like that? Or is it going to be election day and stuff? So again, the timeline of when that storm hits really kind of dictates everything.
Thank you both. And Secretary Byrd, just for clarity, does that mean that email and fax are restricted, not permissible, or is that a flexibility to be negotiated situation by situation?
No, so email and fax would not be permitted under state law as it stands currently, and that's not when we draft an EO, we're crafting it. It can be, obviously we have certain emergency powers, but we still try to tack as closely as possible to existing state law. Email and fax are not one of those, except for UACAVA voters for faxing. So in very limited situations. So we have not made that a practice for email and faxing of ballots in an emergency situation.
Thank you both very much. Next in queue is Thomas Newcomb Hyde, and following Thomas is Zach Smith. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Smith. My name is Tom Hyde. I'm just so grateful to all of you for the tremendous work that you do. Wow, the preparation that you do, the professionalism that you bring to it, all of those are just so wonderful. And I especially appreciated the slides from from Secretary of State Boyd that showed the enormous impact of these storms coming through. And then you had the graphic that showed in many instances that the counties that were under hurricane did better than the counties that did not. So remarkable. Thank you, Secretary of State Boyd and Jim, and God bless all of you for your wonderful, wonderful work. You're so prepared. You're so professional. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, Zach Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nadine. Secretary Byrd, my question is for you. I just want to clarify, and I want to know, would it be a fair statement to say that having up-to-date and accurate voter rolls are critical in helping state and local officials effectively respond in the wake of a natural disaster?
Absolutely. I mean, they're important, as I mentioned, in fair weather, but they're even more important when when we have a natural disaster. In Florida, book closing is 29 days prior to election day, so we have the electorate set 29 days out. But yeah, I mean, knowing who the available pool of voters are, and then when we have a displaced voter and potentially need to send a ballot somewhere that's a different address than the one we have on record, it's just an added security measure to know the pool of the electorate prior to election day, as opposed to some states that allow for same day registration.
Excellent. And then the other question I want to clarify, because I know yesterday we heard about flexibility. I think Justin mentioned flexibility being key as well. And I just want to be sure and clarify that flexibility is still prescribed by state law. Basically, state law would determine the parameters of the flexibility that either your office would have or that the local supervisors would have. Is that a fair statement as well?
Absolutely. And one of my talking points is I kind of analogize it to a bowling lane. The law is the guardrails, the gutters, but within that you have a little bit of flexibility of exactly where along the lane you want to throw the ball. I mean, Miami-Dade County, our largest county, has 1.5 million registered voters. And in Florida, the supervisors of elections offices are funded at the county level. So if you go to Miami-Dade, massive operation, hundreds of employees, huge logistics operation. Then you go to our smallest county, Liberty County, which has fewer than 5,000 registered voters, and they have a supervisor of elections and 1 assistant. They have 2 employees. They have a very small, tiny office. So I think we've done really well as the 3rd largest state in the country to have an election code that can meet the needs of a Miami-Dade and a Liberty County, meaning it has the flexibility, but in working within those parameters when a natural disaster hits, still saying when we craft an EO or the flexibility we provide, it's still really tight to the law that the legislature has passed, that the governor has signed, so that we maintain voter integrity and trust in the process.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you both for being here today. We appreciate it.
Next up, Warren Belmar, the floor is yours.
I'd just like to focus on something that was mentioned yesterday and came up in the most recent discussion, which was the financial resources of the different 67 supervisors of election. From what I gather, we've had no difficulty in terms of the ability of the different supervisors to react in time of an interruption in the election, and that resources, financial and otherwise, through the governor's office or otherwise, are readily available, and we don't have a crisis because of a lack of availability. Is that correct? And if so, I think we ought to let more people know about it.
No, you're absolutely right. And we reach out to the counties. I know the Association of Counties was up here. Obviously, we're in the midst of the legislative session, and I spoke to them and emphasized the importance that as the funding entities, how important they are and the role they play and their coup plans, their emergency procedures. I'm a resident of Duval County, so I know what Duval County does and the great work they do. But then, as I mentioned earlier, part of what I do is I reach out to the supervisors of elections in that county, and really after the storm hits, kind of getting rid of the red tape and making sure that those emergency resources that are available, if that's directing, to get the power back on. So if a supervisor tells me, hey, we have power knocked out in this part of the town, and I have this many precincts impacted, trying to clear the red tape, getting to the people who can get the power turned back on. So that is one of the things that we do is to respond very quickly to get the supervisors of elections the resources they need to ensure as smooth a process as possible.
Did you also want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually when it comes to it, the state's there for us. And again, as the county, the city of Jacksonville and stuff is ready for there. That's kind of being ready for when we go into our emergency preparedness operation, when that's activated and stuff, all of that comes into play. And we start laying out what we need, if we need anything additional and stuff, and they start moving things around and everything as we go from there.
Does the moving around include financial resources when a poor county just does not have the funds to react immediately?
I can't speak for a small county. I can only speak for Duval County and stuff like that. But yeah, if we needed something for things, we would be going through and they would try to activate the funding for that, as long as they seemed reasonable, but for the most part. And then the state obviously could step in.
Right. I mean, I know, tremendous resources are pre-staged prior to a storm event, a weather event, and then we would not let a fiscally constrained counties or our county or potentially their lack of resources in any way impact our ability to assist them to make sure that they can conduct an election. I mean, that's our focus, is providing the supervisors what they need in any given event.
Well, I just hope that somehow the public is able to view this video of the hearing today, because I think it would be extremely helpful to the public at large and our legacy media people to give comfort to everyone with the next election coming up.
Yeah, I'm always beating that drum, so any help we can get to spread the message would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you. The floor now goes to Vice Chair Morley. Who is once again bedeviled by technical issues.
I'm muted
All right.
again.
Oh, there you are. Now we hear you. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Okay, I was just saying, I also do want to echo the comments of several of the speakers who pointed out just how resilient our state's election system has been, and how I do think that Florida election officials are exemplary for the nation in terms of how they've responded to unprecedented emergencies. I wanted to follow up a bit on Secretary Byrd, on one of Secretary Byrd's previous responses. So when the governor issues an executive order in response to an election crisis, pursuant to his statutory authority under Florida state of emergency laws, the point of those orders is to decide which provisions of the election code should be temporarily suspended based on a particular crisis in light of that, and that might be suspending training requirements or suspend for election workers, right, or suspending residency requirements for election workers, right. So part of the state's response to election crises involves suspending provisions of the election code that under particular circumstances just aren't practicable to enforce. So my question is, does the Secretary of State's office have, in a sense, different levels of potential draft executive orders prepared in response, prepared in anticipation of either different types of crises, different severities of crises, different extents of crises, or is this something that either your office or the governor's office needs to, in a sense, come up with on the spot once a crisis has developed and you need to, you see exactly what the facts on the ground are? And if the chair would indulge me in allowing to squeeze in a second offset to that, if a county, and particularly a poor county, as one of the other members had brought up, is in a situation where its voting machines, for example, or its equipment has been destroyed by a natural disaster or by a crisis, would potential replacements come from other counties? Would they come from the Secretary of State's office? In a time-sensitive situation where they can't just go out and buy new ones, where are those emergency replacement supplies coming from?
Sure. So obviously, we don't have pre-prepared EOs. But we do have the historical record. I mean, one of my jobs is to oversee the archive, so we do know what other governors and this governor has done in prior emergency situations. So we, once again, when we craft or start to draft an EO, we try to make it as consistent as possible with prior executive orders, and then tweak it or fine tune it based upon the specific conversations and the specific needs of those counties. So I think if you were to look at the executive order, certainly while Governor DeSantis has been in office, but even going back to prior administrations, that you would see a consistency in the executive orders with respect to the responses and the leeway given. On the topic of what were to happen if supervisors, if the election machines were damaged somehow, and that is always one of our biggest concerns, and one of my calls and pre-planning for a hurricane is to, ask them, are your machines secure? But anything can happen. Fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't had that scenario happen yet. But one thing I know about the 67 supervisors is that they all pitch in to help each other. And should that happen, I think what we would do, because we don't have extra voting systems at the state level, because as you know, there's two certified voting systems in the state of Florida. We don't have those in Tallahassee or at the Department of State. So I think you would see the supervisors step up and pitch in to help each other. And that's what I would anticipate would happen in that scenario.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Next up is Committee Member Brandon Wolf. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for being here. And Secretary Byrd, thank you for being here again. It's good to see you. I have a question about information. One of the things that we've heard over the last couple of days is that it is critical in a natural disaster or emergency environment to be flexible and creative about how we get information to people who are directly impacted, those who may have had normal information mechanisms cut off. And I wonder if you could talk about specifically those living with disabilities, those who receive information in a particularly accessible way. If you've experienced during these emergency situations any disparities or issues getting information to that population, and if you have found any potentially creative solutions to getting information to them.
So I will tell you, I mean, we work closely with the disability community on all sorts of a whole host of election issues, and working with them. So we get our information out through the normal channels, either our partners in traditional media, the supervisors are putting out information, we're putting out information. So something new that happened in 2024 that I'm not aware, when I say it's new, I'm not aware that it's happened in prior emergency events, but went out and had people literally go door to door and put hangers with emergency information, how to get the resources, how to contact FEMA, how to contact your supervisor of elections. So anticipating or assuming that some people didn't have access to maybe their internet was out or their power was out, so sent people literally putting door hangers on doors to try to get information any way we could out to affected or displaced voters.
Thank you so much.
And my question is in the same ballpark, and that is, I believe, I don't know if this has been confirmed, but the National Weather Service, which has been apparently downsized considerably in this moment, has also suspended all but English bulletins. Obviously, in Florida, we're a very multilingual state. Are there provisions, or would this be something, especially in a state of emergency, when being able to communicate with the very diverse population of our state, is there a response to that baked into the emergency responses, or is this something you all have contemplated based on the most recent news reports?
I was not aware that they had discontinued or implemented English only, so I'll have to check on that. But I know that the supervisors in their communication, and I know even at the state level, our communications are in English and Spanish. And I know obviously in certain parts of South Florida, they also do the same thing in Haitian Creole. So we'll continue to do what we need to do at the state level to ensure that voters, the ballots are printed in multiple languages. So obviously we're going to make sure that our communications regarding elections continue to get information to people who English may be their second language.
All right, thank you. Is there any committee member who intended to ask a question who did not get a chance to? If so, please just unmute and jump in. And since this is recorded, let me be very clear that the suspension of Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, French, and Samoan, for all we know at this point, could simply be the changing of a contract to a new provider. But this is the facts as they are on April 9th at 3:55. So any committee member who wants to jump in?
Chair Nadine, it's
Yes.
Charlene. I do have a follow-up question, or at least a question follow-up to yesterday. Confused for a moment. But we heard yesterday, and I'm going to term it as battle fatigue, from many of the supervisors and the workers in North Carolina and other parts of the country that have had emergency disasters, that have dealt with some of the security issues, physical security, with some of the times that we're operating in. And I know I live in Duval, and I know we get lots of threats, but no direct hits. And I think we have there are counties like us in other parts of the state who may be experiencing this, get prepared, and then nothing, sort of happens. So how do you fight against that, number one? And do you anticipate that you'll have turnover in your staff because people are getting a little weary with some of the things that may be occurring around elections?
So battle fatigue. Elections are long hours. For a general election, early voting, we're doing 12-hour days here in Duval County. If the number of workers that are displaced because of a storm and everything, we would be prepared that we're going to lose someone that says they can work 4 days in a row, but reality, they only can get through that third day. So again, as staffing levels, as part of our plan to implement, is to ensure that we have replacements and everything from that side of things. What was the second part? Say that second part of your question.
Well, we also heard that people may be leaving. In North Carolina, as an example, we heard yesterday that several of the supervisors of elections are leaving their positions for a variety of reasons, some including security. And I'm just wondering if we're anticipating the same kind of turnover in Florida, and what are we doing to prepare for that?
I'm not sure how the North Carolina supervisors, I think they're appointed. I don't think they're elected. Ours are elected here in Florida. So I can't speak for my supervisor, Supervisor Holland and stuff, but I don't foresee, people leaving from that side. Maybe they decide not to run on their next election for that reason, but not just up and walk out the door.
Good question.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, last call for questions before we turn to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to weigh in. And seeing none, I will thank you both, Secretary Byrd and Justin. I fear I've butchered your last name. Would you say it
Everyone
for me?
does. No worry. It's Gic and then alone.
Gicalone. Well, Mr. Gicalone, thank you. And
Thank you.
Secretary Byrd, I want to say it means the world to us to have you here. There's a huge difference between going straight to the source and having to find our way to the information. So thank you so much for making time to be here.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to share the successes that Florida has with everyone.
Thank you. Now, panelists, you are free to leave if you wish at this time, and you're certainly welcome to stay. Should we have any public comments, we'll now begin public comments. Is there anyone waiting in the queue, Melissa or Liliana? And as
I do
wait,
not see any hands raised at this time.
okay, well, I'll go through the formality of explaining that we will now begin the public comment section. This is an opportunity for the public to offer comments to the committee about this topic in order to allow time for us to hear from multiple members of the public who may be interested in speaking today. Please keep your comments limited to 2 to 4 minutes. As a reminder, all remarks are recorded and transcribed for the public record. As the chair, I reserve the right to cut short any statements that defame, degrade, or do not pertain to the issue at hand. I will now invite members of the public to share brief statements with the committee. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Use the raise hand feature on your Zoom or by pressing *9. These instructions are on the screen right now as well. And I will call on you in the order I see hands raised. If you're unable to share testimony live during today's briefing for any reason, please reach out to, I'm going to spell it for you, LSCHILLER @usccr.gov to follow up within the next 30 days. Information on how to follow up is also included on this final slide. And seeing no takers for the public comment section, I thank everyone for joining today. And if you joined, if for any reason you were not able to submit comments today on the Zoom, again, you have 30 days, within 30 days of this briefing, that would be by May 9th, 2025, to submit your written remarks. This information is, again, available on this slide, and I'd like to thank all of our speakers, members of the public, for attending and sharing your testimony with the committee. We very much appreciate your time, and we'll keep your comments in mind as we draft our report. Information on upcoming meetings, the regular meetings of the committee, are open to the public, and that information will be available on the Federal Register. And with that said, I will now adjourn our meeting with my thanks to everyone for participating. Take care.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good night.
Thank you, Madam
Goodbye,
Chair.
everyone.
Good night.
Miss you, Nadine.
One day we'll have that drink. Take care.